This is Mastering Your Wealth with David Gagnon, the podcast.
It is a new year, which means folks out there are setting all these new resolutions. Some people are really checking in with their finance, going, my New Year's resolution is to get everything in order, make sure I have that protection plan for the growth I want in retirement, make sure I'm on track with my retirement plan. And David, I know you've been seeing this a lot in the office. What are folks coming in about? Tell me a little bit about this new year, new you plan when it comes to finances.
Well, a lot of people just want to see if they're invested in the right places. They've seen that their portfolios have gone up and they're at a pretty good level of value, but they're kind of worried, what happens if, there's still a lot of things going around the world globally. I mean, the potential war and, there are wars, but we don't know how that's going to escalate and what that might do to the market. But there's all kinds of things that can, at a moment's notice, change the markets, and they could go south on you pretty quick. So a lot of people are looking to see, first of all, are they invested appropriately to meet their long-term goals and objectives? Because a lot of people don't really get any financial x-rays on how they're investing their money, and that's why we always do a portfolio investment analysis. And that gives us a lot of information that we can share with clients. And we can show them how much risk they're exposed to, whether, in fact, they're really, truly diversified. I mean, we see a lot of people that are kind of in your vanilla-type investment portfolio where they're in a model of mutual funds, and they might have 60% in stock funds and 40% in bond funds. And, for accumulation tools, that might be a good approach. But when you get to retirement, your distribution income plan needs to really be aligned for income and it's set up the right way so you get the returns you need to create that income, but not tie up all your money to create that income that you're going to need. You want to have some money allocated for long-term growth to offset inflation, maybe something in the mix to build a tax strategy for long-term use later where you can have access to some tax-free money or some out-of-pocket health care planning. So, a lot of people are trying to get a better handle on whether their investment plan is really going to work for them and if they have enough for retirement.
That's the number one question is, have I done enough? Have I saved enough? Am I going to be okay? And listen, if this is you and you're starting off 2025 on the good foot saying, hey, man, I want to get these questions answered. I want to talk about, my plan in general, tax planning, making sure that is, where I want it to be, making sure my income plan's where I want it to be, my risk factor. You're in the right place here tuning into the show. Now, the next step is picking up your cell phone and saying, hey, David, let's sit down one-on-one. Let's do this financial forecast. Let's see where I'm at, where do I want to be, how am I going to get there? And then David's going to help you create a plan to fill in those blanks. Now, jumping right into it here, the stock market has been steadily going up since the election. And then Emily Rowland of John Hancock, she was recently on CNBC celebrating the win, but also cautioning investors about pushing into too much risk.
We have a playbook for this. You look back at 2016, 2017, and post-election, you saw a massive rally in areas like regional banks that could potentially be beneficiaries of deregulation. The services side is booming. The consumer is doing well. So we would continue to emphasize U.S. assets in a broader global portfolio. We would just think about sort of pruning risk at the margin. We don't want to be going over our skis here.
Okay, so David, are you also in the, whole proceed with caution attitude, or are you more, hey, pedal to the metal, let's go?
A lot of people feel they have to take risks to get better returns, and that's so far from the truth today because there's so many things that we can do in the investment community differently than possibly 20, 30 years ago, where there are tools and financial strategies, and a lot of them are used by the wealthy. Why do you think the people are wealthy? Because the 1%ers I'm talking about, up to the 5%ers, they do things differently, and they have different access to different resources to make their money work more for them instead of against them with taking on too much risk. And I think what's important to understand is if you have somebody that is going to put together a strategic investment plan that's designed around your objectives, the best plans are going to use tools and strategies that have buffers on them that allow you to protect your money on the downside if the markets don't do so well, or hedging strategies, but still capture the upside. Because here's the thing, when people see how consistency and reduction of volatility in your investment plan compares to something that's more volatile and not as consistent in returns, you're going to build more wealth with consistency, because what we want to do is find ways to buffer that downside. Because a lot of people, they go through these cycles in the market where back in '08, for instance, people were down 30 to 50%. And I'll ask these folks that we haven't met before when they come in, how was your experience back in that period of time in your investment plan? Well, I hear this all the time. Well, I was down 30, 40, 50%, but I didn't sell anything, but it all came back. Okay, well, how many years did that take to come back? And it ranged from 4 to 6 years. I don't care if you sell your investments in the down market or you keep your investments. You start from a loss position. It doesn't matter. So what we need to show and educate people is how do you eliminate that big drop in your portfolio? Because if you have the tools and the investment strategies, the airbags on your money that still give you the upside, but show you how to be less volatile along the way, you're going to end up accumulating more wealth, having more income. And when we were just talking about us doing these portfolio investment analysis or x-rays, financial x-rays, what's really good about that exercise is the fact that we can show people in their own numbers what kind of risk they're taking, what kind of returns they may have had, and then how does that compare to a professionally managed tactical portfolio in the long term? Because what we're seeing in almost every case, we're showing people how to reduce their risk anywhere from 30 to 70% and increase their yields by anywhere from 25 to 50%. And so when you see that and you start overlaying those better results in a plan, the long-term financial picture is so dramatically different in a good way. People take better control over their money. They have more spendable income. They have less guesswork in what they need to do with their money and better control over the risk factor. And then we find ways in many cases to be tax efficient, and that just adds more to the pie.
David, just kind of going off the same topic about how, folks need to kind of look at their position in the market, need to look at their financial plan overall, and just basically need to start having this conversation. What's that first time meeting with you like?
Well, I always like to have that, first of all, have a conversation just so I can see where the concerns are, your experiences, good and bad, previously, and what you've been doing. But then when we get through that conversation, what I end up doing is we'll send an email that will come from our paraplanner, Frank, and that will be the ability to create a login into our planning portal where people can give us their information. It's all encrypted. We'll need some information about the family dynamics, age, date of birth, all that stuff, and recent statements on not just your investment accounts, but everything else. We look at your debts. I look at your tax returns. All these are financial moving pieces to your overall planning puzzle. So I need to evaluate everything as a whole. And then what we start doing is that initial forecast analysis. And some people want to see, well, what if I need to buy a car every 5 years, or I still have somebody to put through college? We can model out those budgeted items that you might need to put into your plan to see how it's going to work. And then when we go through that exercise, alongside that, I'm going to also do a detailed investment portfolio financial x-ray, because I need to see if your investments are aligned with what your plan analysis shows us you're going to need to create for income in the future, adjusted for inflation and taxes and so on. And that is a good way to get some initial clarity as to whether what you're presently doing is going to work out for you. But now it puts us in a position to see, all right, what are the problems that might lie ahead? What are the opportunities and solutions and strategies to make some great strides in improving things long term? I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to this, but recently we just worked with a couple and they were planning on retiring in a couple of years, and they had a lot of questions that they weren't getting their answers from their current investment person, such as when should they take their Social Security? What about their pension options? They did have a pension. And then where should they relocate if they wanted to relocate for tax purposes or lower expenses? And so, they weren't getting any of those answers, and that's why they had reached out to us. They've been listening to the radio for a long time. And so what we did was we put together their analysis, and we first of all gave them, the optimization timing of when they should take their Social Security based on a lot of different things, but we were able to give them that answer. But what we found was their investment plan was not aligned with what their needs are going to call for creating income. And they were taking way too much risk. And so we showed them how to structure things in their plan analysis so that we had a lot of different values and benefits built in for the long term, not only the short term, but gave them lower risk, better yields, and predictable income. But we were able to build some tax efficiency planning with some of the money. They had accumulated a lot of money in their tax-deferred retirement accounts. And what we had showed them was their required minimum distributions were going to start pushing them into a pretty high tax bracket when they turned 75. So we had that tax planning discussion. But all in all, what it enabled them to do is to see how their plan forward would look like with different variables. We stress tested for higher inflation, higher taxes, and out-of-pocket health care. And, some of the things were falling short, but we were able to come up with a plan and a strategy to give them some clarity as to what they could do today before they retired to take control over the outcome and take less risk and be more tax efficient. And they were going to have plenty of lifetime income to live on for the rest of their life. And the byproduct of making better decisions today and getting better financial results through their lifetime is their kids are going to reap the benefits of more wealth transfers to them because their parents took a time to put together a great plan. And not only did they end up with better results in their lifetime, their children will also get a better, more tax-efficient wealth transfer at the end of the day.
Are you a fan of Eddie Murphy, David?
Yeah, I used to love watching him way back when he was with Saturday Night Live. He was pretty funny.
Yes, Saturday Night Live. And I remember watching all his stand-ups. Remember his outfits? He had like the red leather outfit or whatever it was, and I think he had a purple one. How he got in and out of those outfits, I'll never know. But
he managed some way.
He managed some way. Obviously, one of the most famous comedians in the world, known for a lot of different things. And at one point, he was known for his laugh, or at least the way he used to laugh. Recently, Eddie explained during a promotional tour kind of how he had to make some adjustments. Listen to this.
That was my real laugh. And then I realized, they're laughing at my laugh. And then it became like, all you have to do is do that laugh, and they would laugh. And it was like, oh no. And I really made myself stop laughing. Like, I don't laugh like that anymore. And it's a strange thing as a human being to have to adjust something as natural as that, where you go through, I can't laugh like that. And once I was going into a hotel, and a guy came to me and said, hey, just between you and me, is that done with computers? I don't even know how to answer that.
First of all, I never knew that was his real laugh. I thought he was putting it on. Did you?
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
For years, literally, my whole life thought, this is part of his act. This is what he does. But interesting that he had to make this adjustment. And, of course, I can link this to retirement, making, adjustments to your financial plans over your lifetime. And obviously, when they meet with you, David, you say, hey, look, these are things we need to adjust and make changes. And this is how we're going to create your goals. Talk about that.
Well, first of all, he shouldn't be ashamed about his laugh. That's what made him famous, right?
That and his amazing comedy. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah. When it comes to planning, when you put together your initial plan, it's not a set it and forget it process. Our clients are long-term clients. I'm not looking to have somebody call me and just sell them something. I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that because I don't know if that's the right thing for them. So when we put together a long-term relationship and a plan, we have to keep adjusting the plan to whatever changes, because a plan's always going to change and it's never going to work out exactly as was laid out, because the inflation changes, your taxes change, your health changes, your spending changes, everything changes. And when we work with people, when we put their initial plan structure together, every year, Frank will reach out, my paraplanner, and we'll see, all right, we need to update your plan, see how it looks from the past year and whether we have to tweak it for anything. And some people might say, well, gosh, I'd like to have a little bit more spendable income. Okay, we'll work that out and make those changes. And if you're not doing that, at some point, somebody's going to fall off the rails with their retirement, and it's going to be at a time they can't fix it. And so I think planning and evaluating is always going to be a lifetime project, but we do all the heavy lifting. Once we get the structure in place, now it's easy to keep you on track and adapt to any modifications that are required, any changes that affect your money, any desires that you might want to change with your lifestyle and your spending habits. This is what planning is all about. And it's evaluating all the moving parts to make sure you're optimizing everything and minimizing all kinds of risk along the way, because there's all kinds of risks. It's not just market risk. It's tax risk, interest rate risk, healthcare risk, longevity risk. So, we're trying to mitigate as many of those areas of risk as possible with a good plan, and you got to keep an eye on it.
Before we close up here, David, what would you say is a goal for 2025 that if you're sitting at home right now, maybe you haven't made a resolution or maybe you're not sure where to start with your finances, what are maybe 1 to 2 things that we need to set goals for our financials for 2025?
Don't procrastinate. People are failing financially because they're procrastinating and reaching out to learn about their current financial position and whether, in fact, there are better ways to put a plan together. People procrastinate in making better financial decisions because it's a topic, it's an area people are uncomfortable with. Some people are embarrassed to talk about it because they waited so late in life. What's important is what decisions you make today going forward, but you need the information to give you the ability to make better decisions and better understand what's working for you and what isn't. Because, a lot of people, almost everybody that I meet with, after they see what we've gone through and put together for them and see the results they're getting, they almost always say, gosh, I wish I met you 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Well, you can't do anything about that, right? It's what you do going forward today. So don't procrastinate. Your money can either work for you or against you. It all depends on what decisions you're making with your finances. So procrastination is the number one reason people fail in meeting their financial objectives.
For more details or to sit down with David for your complimentary financial GPS, visit masteringyourwealthradio.com. David Gagnon is an investment advisor representative of Retirement Wealth Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. First Financial Planners, Retirement Wealth Advisors, and WICC are not affiliated. Exposure to ideas and financial vehicles discussed should not be considered financial advice or a recommendation to buy or sell any financial vehicle. Individuals should consult with a professional specializing in the fields of tax, legal, accounting, or investments regarding the applicability of this information for their situation. Past performance is not a guarantee of future result. Investments will fluctuate and when redeemed may be worth more or less than when originally invested.